Murakami wrote that while training for a marathon, he wasn't writing philosophy. He was describing something he had noticed about the difference between what the body endures and what the mind chooses to do with it. Most people read that sentence and agree with it immediately. Almost no one knows how to use it. The mind is extraordinarily efficient at one particular task, taking what is difficult and making it unbearable, not through weakness, not through failure, but through a set of mental operations so automatic, so fast, so invisible that most people never realize they're happening at all. Psychologists draw a precise distinction between two categories of experience that most people treat as identical. The first is the problem itself, the event, the circumstance, the fact. Job lost, relationship ended, health compromised. The second is the mental response to that fact, the interpretation, the projection, the narrative the mind construct around it. The problem exists in reality. The suffering exists in the mind. And the critical insight, the one most people spend a lifetime missing, is that these two things are not the same. The stone that falls into the water is the problem. The waves that spread outward indefinitely, long after the stone has settled, those are the suffering. The mind doesn't just register what happened. It keeps generating waves, replaying, projecting, catastrophizing, building elaborate structures of meaning around an event that has already ended. The event lasts seconds. The mental construction of the event can last years. Seneca observed this 2,000 years ago, and what makes his observation remarkable is not its age, but its precision. He didn't say we suffer unnecessarily. He said we suffer more in imagination, which means some suffering is real. Some pain is appropriate, necessary, even useful. The question has never been how to eliminate suffering entirely. The question is how to stop the mind from manufacturing suffering beyond what the situation actually requires. The conversion of problem into suffering happens through a sequence of cognitive operations that psychologists have mapped precisely. It begins with what Aaron Beck called cognitive distortions, systematic errors in the way the mind processes information, catastrophizing, assuming the worst possible outcome, overgeneralizing, treating one event as evidence of a permanent pattern, mind reading, assuming you know what others think, fortune telling, treating an imagined future as a fact. Each of these operations takes a problem and expands it far beyond its actual dimensions. But here is what makes this pattern particularly difficult to interrupt. The mind doesn't flag these operations as errors. It experiences them as thinking, as being realistic, as being appropriately prepared for what might go wrong. The person who catastrophizes doesn't believe they are catastrophizing. They believe they are being thorough. The person who overgeneralizes doesn't believe they are distorting. They believe they are seeing clearly. The very operations that produce suffering present themselves as the solution to it. And this creates a secondary layer of suffering that is often worse than the first. The person suffers. Then they suffer about the fact that they are suffering. They judge themselves for not being stronger, for not being over it already, for thinking about it again. The original problem generates suffering. The reaction to that suffering generates a second layer, and then a third. Most people, when they say they cannot stop thinking about something, are not trapped by the original problem. They are trapped in the layers they build around it. In the 1970s, psychologist Albert Ellis developed what he called rational emotive behavior therapy. His central observation was deceptively simple. It is not events that disturb people. It is their beliefs about events. Ellis called this the ABC model. The activating event. B, the belief about that event. C, the emotional consequence. Most people go directly from A to C and assume that A caused C, but Ellis demonstrated, repeatedly and empirically, that B is the critical variable. The same event, processed through different beliefs, produces entirely different consequences. The event didn't cause the suffering. The interpretation did. Decades later, the neuroscience caught up with Ellis. Researchers studying emotional regulation found that the same neural circuits activated by actual threats are activated by imagined threats. The brain, in other words, does not reliably distinguish between what is happening and what the mind is generating about what is happening, which means the suffering produced by mental elaboration is physiologically real. It taxes the same systems. It depletes the same resources. It produces the same cortisol, the same elevated heart rate, the same narrowed attention. The mind's stories about problems cost the body exactly as much as the problems themselves. And this is where the research becomes actionable, though not in the way most people expect. The solution is not to stop thinking. It is not to think positively. It is not to distract, suppress, or reframe on command. The solution, the one that the evidence actually supports, is to develop the capacity to notice the gap between A and C, to see belief B, not to change it immediately, not to challenge it aggressively, but simply to see it, because a belief that has been seen is no longer completely invisible, and a mechanism that is no longer invisible has already lost some of its power. The Stoic philosophers built an entire tradition around this single insight. Epictetus, a former slave, taught that the fundamental distinction between what is in our control and what is not a philosophical abstraction. It is a practical tool for navigating the gap between event and response. He didn't teach people to be indifferent to difficulty. He taught them to locate the suffering precisely, to find exactly where the mind had added something to reality that reality itself did not contain. That addition, he argued, is always optional, not easy to remove, but optional. The Buddhist tradition approached the same problem from a different direction. The first of the Four Noble Truths is not, as is often translated, that life is suffering. The Pali word dukkha is more precisely translated as unsatisfactoriness, the fundamental gap between what is and what the mind insists should be. Suffering, in the Buddhist framework, is not caused by pain. It is caused by resistance to pain, by the mind's refusal to accept what the present moment actually contains. The problem is not the problem. The problem is the mind's argument with the problem. Viktor Frankl, writing from inside a concentration camp, documented something that the Stoics and Buddhists had observed from the outside, that even in conditions of absolute external constraint, the relationship between event and response remains, however narrowly, available. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, he wrote, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is not optimism. It is a precise observation about the architecture of human suffering. There is a cost to a mind that systematically converts problems into suffering that goes beyond the immediate experience of distress. It doesn't show up in a single bad day. It accumulates in the chronic activation of the stress response for events that have already passed, in the cognitive resources consumed by mental elaboration that could have been directed elsewhere, in the decisions made from inside amplified states that bear no proportion to the actual situation, in the relationships shaped by reactions to stories about what happened rather than to what actually happened. Researcher Susan Nolan Hoaxum has spent 2 decades studying rumination, the tendency to repetitively focus on distress and its causes and consequences. Her findings were unambiguous. Rumination does not help people solve problems. It prolongs negative mood. It impairs problem solving. It increases the likelihood of clinical depression. And, perhaps most counterintuitively, it increases the feeling that the problem is larger and more permanent than it actually is. The mind that keeps returning to the problem is not processing it. It is enlarging it. Every return visit adds another layer. Every layer makes the exit harder to find. And this is the mechanism that closes the loop. The mind generates suffering from a problem. The suffering feels like evidence that the problem is serious. The sense of seriousness justifies more mental attention. More mental attention produces more elaboration. More elaboration produces more suffering, which feels like more evidence of seriousness. The loop is not driven by the problem. It is driven by the mind's relationship to problem. And that relationship, unlike the problem itself, is something the mind can actually change, not through will, not through force, but through the slow accumulation of a different kind of attention. The mind will always generate some suffering. That is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a feature of a system designed to anticipate, protect, and respond. But there is a difference between the suffering that is proportionate, the signal that something matters, that attention is required, that something needs to change, and the suffering that is manufactured, the elaboration, the amplification, the layers built around a stone that is long since settled. The question is not how to stop feeling. The question is whether you can learn to notice the moment the mind moves from the problem to the story about the problem. Because in that moment, brief, easily missed, requiring no force, something becomes possible that was not possible before. Not the elimination of difficulty, but the refusal to add to what is already there. The problem arrives. The suffering is what you build around it. You don't have to keep building. Inner observer. Observe your mind. Understand reality.